All right, so let's get started. So my name is John Liu. I'm a faculty member in the department. So thank you everyone for coming to the last lecture series of the fall semester. And today we are very honored and have the pleasure to welcome Dr. Kim Oh Seok from Korea University. Dr. Kim is a faculty member in the Department of Geography, and he will present to us a very exciting talk. I think this is very innovative and something I don't think it's very well researched in Taiwan, the topic on integrating spatial demography, public health, and climate vulnerability, where the country's population is declining and rapidly aging. I think given the title, we see there's a lot of similarities between what's going on in South Korea and in Taiwan. So I very much look forward to Dr. Kim's presentation. So let's leave the floor to Dr. Kim.
Thank you so much for your kind and warm welcoming introduction. It's so good to see you all, and I'm happy that we're all happy that semester is ending, right? So I'll make it quick as soon as possible. Even though the slide only shows my name, but you'll see throughout the slides that many of my works are supported by other colleagues from Korea Environment Institute and Penn State University as well. These are the background, the overview. So I'll start with some very brief background about South Korea and Seoul, where I'm from, and some of my pedigree. And I'll start with population projections because I found that was not only in Taiwan, even in South Korea, not many demographers and sociologists or even geographers work on a very handful of that. So I think that's why we have to transfer our knowledge and meet quite often. And hopefully you'll feel why that piece of work is important, because projection itself is very mechanic and could be boring, but that will also give us a very good insight for population implosion and climate risk and so forth. This is my background. It's a very old book. It's called People and Pixels. When I read that book, I was a grad student. It wasn't even old. Geographers, sociologists, and economists wrote the book together. You don't have to read it now because it's too outdated technology, but the basic message is to make everything to have a same unit so it can be analyzed together. So I did my undergrad in Korea and did my master's in Massachusetts, Clark University, and finished my degree at Los Angeles at University of Southern California. And this is where I'm at. I teach, as a geographer, I teach environment and population. And I used to work for the Korea Environment Institute, which is similar to Academia Sinica or something similar. I just, I learned from John, but I don't remember precisely. And now I teach at the university in Seoul, Korea University. It's really cool. We are famous for not only academic performance, but having one of the best festivals, not only at the university level, the national level. I don't think you'll recognize this singer. He's kind of older. He's Psy. His famous song will be Gangnam Style. But Psy used to, some of you know him, right? But not like BTS and Blackpink. They won't come. They're too big. But the other younger K-pop star, every year they come to university. So we joined us. This time was the first one after the COVID. So that one has the largest population. It's like 3,000 people. And I think, 30,000. Yeah, 30,000 people. And since then, professors aren't allowed to join the festival because during the COVID, like 3 years, it wasn't possible to have this festival. So there's like a traffic of undergrads who wants to join this as much frequently as possible. Anyway, if you ever plan to come visit here in Seoul as an exchange student, I recommend you come during the spring if you want to enjoy these kind of things, okay? So also very basic geography. We're not very far, only 3 hours from each other. And as you can see, not like Taiwan in the middle, but we have a mountain ridges on the eastern part of our peninsula. And the west, it's rather very flat, right? I mean, a lot of agriculture and huge cities. And the ocean of the west, the ocean between like mainland China and Korea is very shallow. Ocean, the east part between Korea and Japan is rather deep. Okay, so that makes us quite similar in many, many different things, including climate and demography. I was impressed about or shocked about how similar we are, and I hope you feel the same throughout my talk. This is my favorite figure from the government report because it shows the Korean history, right? This is how we understand our what we're at the moment. So the cavity or dips indicate some historical events like World War II and Korean War and so forth. Later, these parts are like a policy. Some are good, some are bad, works, but eventually you'll see that the below we have such a short bar, right? It means that both female, male kids are shrinking. And this, if I convert this figure to later and temporal, then it's not very difficult to foresee that we're losing population. Right? And I talked about this during the lunch with the faculty members of your department, but even though we have those great data sets, many of them are freely downloadable, but like a researcher like us, because we have to do something very cutting edge, data aren't enough. And actually, there are many ministries and central governments in Korea producing different kind of data sets, starting from Statistics Korea and others. And you see that all data are different, but they're not all like together. Especially for me, the best will be the health insurance bill because it has all information. So that's why that's really difficult to get. In order to work on the data, a researcher has to visit a specific facility and to work on there and come out. And that's, yeah, I think that's the way it should. But for us, we wish we could have more, but we'll see in the future. So data gap for me will be that Korea lacks population projections and that at the high spatial resolution. High spatial resolution will mean more colors in the maps. I'm a geographer, also a special demographer. It means that I use a lot of maps to do my analysis. And the map has to be colorful, so then we say it's mappable. If it's pure color, it's better to present either in table or other figures, right? But we don't have. And they do partially, but they're not complete. They're all done by different municipals, so they're not very cohesive. It's not also very transparently reported. Then we cannot write a scientific paper out of it, right? And the good thing is that recently the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transportation, they are the ministry who support mapping in Korea, so they started producing and distributing graded population. But the downside is that they don't really know about demography or train as a sociologist or population geographer. So migration is overlooked. But countries like us, Taiwan and Korea, if you don't ignore like urban migration, then all numbers are kind of not sure whether to use it or not, right? That's at least how I felt. And these are the example of the government data reports. You can also download it. I'm sure it has some English version as well, the most recent one. From here, I want you to remember these three names. I'm sure you know Seoul, right? Gyeonggi is like New Taipei. It's around Seoul. It's the largest province in terms of population in Korea. And South Chungcheong, this is adjacent to Gyeonggi, but you can tell that it's quite remote. So if you take a bullet train from Seoul to Sejong, it will be like 40 to 50 minutes, depends on how many stops you get. So anyway, that's the highest resolution, spatial resolution that government provides officially. And the blue indicates population. I think it changed. No, a bit increase, and the yellow shows decrease. So throughout time, in the future, by 2052, all provinces except the one, the Sejong. Sejong is now where Korean government exists. Many academic institutes used to be in Seoul, but one of the presidents sent all of them throughout country, so to reallocate jobs and schools and population evenly. And so far, I'm not sure that's a success. At least that's the one that's actually somehow working and making differences. So this is the government view. But as a geographer, I thought that's not really enough, because I'm sure you feel that too. You can work in Taipei, but you can live in New Taipei, right? I don't think it's very uncommon here. Same in Korea. One of the Gyeonggi provinces is near the DMZ, but the other, they have all like IT technology, right? And if you ever visited Seoul, you must have been impressed. This is the best part of Seoul, I think, the metro. We have very, I think it's really convenient. That's what, I mean, partly because I hate driving. That's why I'm enjoying quite a lot. But you see, that's my university, that circle there. By taking a metro, only one stop, I can come here. And that's even a different province, right? So this is how the Seoul region as a whole are well connected. So even though like a city in Gyeonggi province here is very different from near the DMZ, but government thinks, I mean, they have to think legally, right? So they cannot ignore the legal administrative boundaries. So I understand why they have to stick with it. But in our case, like researchers, that if we have a different boundary, it will make everything different, right? And that's the main message that I want to share with you today, why spatial demography matters, because we start with this criticizing, or at least not denying, but want to make it more better and accurate. Does it make sense to you? Okay, and based on, so considering this metro, we also have buses as well. I didn't consider taxi. We redefined the South Korea to 37 sub-regions. And those methods were invented before. So this Seoul is not a city, it's more of the region. Yeah, it can, the downside will be it can change in the future, the past, right? So that's also something me and one of my students are working on, so it can be more consistent over time. Because if changed all the time, it's also annoying, right? And that's where we're at. And this Seoul includes like 40% of the total population. That's a lot, right? And this gray areas, that's only large cities, and that's total 74%. The rest, white areas, it's like 26% of the population. So you see that how like uneven they are. I mean, the people are throughout our country, right? And I think this, my co-authors, this new specification or delineation, it's geographically makes more sense because it also reflects the mountain ridges more accurately. So if I compare later maps, I found it better. Okay, why we start this paper? The first was, but we didn't really like the boundary. And we all know that Korea will get one of the oldest country soon. And so these are some stats parameters that we considered. Right? The downside will be international migration wasn't possible in our work, right? Because they don't have the very spatially high resolution data sets. It's not. I'm sure it's collected somehow, but it's not provided yet. So these are the very simple questions. So which one will be super age society? And which one will be the youngest, right? And third, so which metropolitan areas will be the first, and so forth, right? And fourth will be which one is the most radical change, okay? And these are the different models that I use. The left column indicates the government models. The right column indicates our model. The same one is different, but same one is identical, but we use different assumptions. I'll show you briefly how. And mortality, we use different one. I'm not going to talk about government one, but I'll give you a rationale why we use the other model. And both we use gross migration. It means that we consider more than net migration, but difference is that our model is simpler. Migrant pool model is a very primitive model. If you look into if you want to learn about that model, you may ended up reading American papers published in the 1960s or 70s. Yeah, that's really simple. So the difference is that in order to use multi-regional model, you have to know which people are coming from where to where, right? So you need more data set. Migrant pool model is simpler. We invent an imaginary pool and put all migrant people who are migrating out of the counties and cities there, and later reallocate back who are having migrants. Okay, so very similar. This is how model looks like. These are the age-specific fertility. Sorry that I didn't translate it into English. Se means like sway in Chinese, so 15 to 45. These are the cohort born in 1960, so a bit younger than my parents. This is my cohort, 1980. So compared to these people, we're having fewer kids and later, right? And it's only gonna get, I wouldn't say worse, but it's going this way, right? Yes, it's also one that when I wrote the paper, I want to compare that with the newest government report. So it's actually getting, I guess, faster. And this is the government assumption projection, which is different from our work. Somehow government is very hopeful that our fertility, well, but it's their job too, right? They have to be hopeful, right? At least someone has to be hopeful. So the total fertility-wise, it's gonna be more than one after 50 years from now, but we don't know how and why. Yeah, but I understand. I'm not blaming them, but I'm just sharing what I read transparently, right? And these are the age specifics. If you see that after 50 years from now, somehow we're having more kids, I don't know. I'm sure I cannot have one. My wife won't like it. And not till later, right? So that's what, and this is the government view. And our research view is that we just embrace the observed pattern as it is, whether we like it or not, whether we want to be hopeful or miserable. So that makes a huge difference. And Heligman Pollard model is good at decomposing these components into three. And this isn't something that I'm not very, you know how this is like log mortality. It's like a Nike form. And the first component is the mortality related to immune system. So once we're born, like when my son was born, he's so weak. If you get a cold, it'll be a serious disease for him, right? But after 100 days and 1 year, he builds up his immune system. That's why this mortality goes low. And this mortality, the third component is about aging, right? We feel it, not you yet, but I feel it every day. I feel it every day. And the second one is something, it's like a hump or bump. You see the age is like 20, early 20s and 30. This is the time that we do stupid things and more of accidents or exotic things, right? And that's the thing. But in Korea, I'm not very proud of it, but we're also very famous for a lot of suicide rates, right? And also cancer, right? So I thought this model is better than the Lee Carter family model. That's what he kind of modeled it. But even though in paper all the details aren't there, because you'll see later on, it's You'll see later on why. And of course, migration schedule. I'm sure you all know this, but anyway, I'll explain it for those who don't know it. We migrate the most when we're in the 20s or 30s, mainly because of education. If someone is born elsewhere in Taiwan, wanted to come to NTU, you have to migrate. After you finish degree, if you want to go, let's say, come to Korea, then you have to migrate, and that's where you have. And later here, it's after retirement, we may rethink where to live to spend our older life. And the migration here, the younger kids, is because they come after with the family, right? That's why how that's. And that pattern, according to scholar who invented it, is kind of universal, but different size, but the pattern kind of exists, like the log mortality as well. So these patterns are all modeled, so eventually produces this figure. Can I, do you want, how many minutes do I have? It's 40 minutes left? No way, only 5 minutes spent? Okay. Because if I wanted to zoom in, but let's assume that I didn't have enough time. The blue indicates decreases in population, the red indicates increase. And if you zoom in, I'll have a, yeah, let's try to zoom in. As you can tell, it's very high resolution. And you can download it here if you have an internet. The bright color indicates the pyramid of 2050, and the pale one is 2020. We did that for all 37 regions. And these are the legend, right? The red indicates the growth. So Sejong is the only one has been growing. So that's why the population pyramid of 2050 is blocking the older population, right? Older pyramid. And if you see Seoul, it's going up, right? Also decreasing because Seoul is getting more and more expensive. It has been losing population for more than 2 decades. Yeah. It's just like going to Gyeonggi provinces elsewhere. Same rationale, same data sets, but different maps. This is for older people above 65. I shouldn't say senior, but I wasn't. Anyway, that's what I did. Mistakes. But red indicates growth. The darker means more larger growth. And green indicates, or blue indicates decrease. So these regions, they're even losing older populations. That's not really positive, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's see whether I can read Chinese. Nope. Full screen? I think. Guess. Thank you, sir. Yep. So, and this is the paper that has huge PDF as a lecture and supplementary material. It took 5 years to work on one paper, so you shouldn't do it. I mean, at least students shouldn't do it. You won't be able to get a job. I did this after getting a job. That's really important. I couldn't say no because the other professor, Kim, taught me statistics when I was an undergrad. He's a statistician. He does population statistics, and I double major in geography and statistics. So I was very happy to meet him again, my PhD. And it was the first paper ever published regarding Korean population projection. And so far, the only one. And I bet that, I don't think other people, because you saw all those modeling. Each modeling, you can write one paper, right? And that's what we should do. But he said, no, just let's finish it soon. Okay, sir, and that's what we did. So these are the main messages, the second one. this is how we summarize Korean population. Fertility is the lowest, but I'm sure it's not very different from Taiwan. And mortality and life expectancy will be the oldest, the highest. And we have extreme urbanization, right? And these three sentences characterize Korean population. So it's quite messy. So based on this, I thought the Busan will be the first to be super aged, right, by 29. And I was correct. I'll show you some ground truthing later. And Sejong is the youngest, but it will experience the most radical change, right? So then doing business in Sejong might not be a good option. After publishing the paper, there was a news article, one of the major in Korea, published 2023, and Busan got super aged by then. So our prediction somehow is right. And if you see temporal-wise, these are how they differ. We compare different scenarios, projections. The top one is the most hopeful one, of course, by the government. It's called moderate scenario, right? But in order to be defensive, they don't only share one projection, they share like tens of scenario, then they can be less criticized, right? I think that's a very wise way to do so. I'm not sure I'll work for the government. If I'm to do so, I'll do the same thing. But our projection go along with their lowest low scenario. So we're losing population more rapidly. And mainly because of this is the why, whenever there's a news news coverage based on our population issues, that always faster than the government expects, earlier than the government expects, more radical than the government expects. And I think the main reason is because of different degree of hopes. And if you read news, I'm sure, not sure, but here, but in Germany and France, public pension is a huge issue, right? But for me, there's a more imagining threats. And this is the paper that I worked with MDs, medical doctors. I converse with them from time to time. Of course, Stefan and the Professor Kim was part of it too, fortunately. And I wasn't sure that we're gonna have enough blood so we can live or sustain our health or life. If it's not health, it's vital, right? And it isn't. And this isn't the first paper similar to it, but the one that I was influenced is a Chinese paper, was published a few years earlier than my paper because I was motivated that paper. But it has my paper has a better data set. So once you read it, once you read the Chinese paper, you'll see the difference. And also hopefully you might be able to do something similar in Taiwan as well. So in a nutshell, we don't have enough blood because we don't donate enough, but we're using more, right? Like same with the pension. And the Gyeonggi province is the worst because it has the largest population, means also largest older population, right? Oh yeah, but I thought by that time you'll get bored, so I brought some of my military pictures. When I was younger, they don't look, I shaved, and these are parachute. I used to jump 6 times, I had to. It's a bad luck. I didn't apply for it, but I happened to be part of it. And you'll understand why I brought this. It's so catchy, I had to explain it first. You see the blood donation, the largest population who donate blood is teenagers and early 20s. Early 20s, like, I donated blood when I was in the military, so I can have a day off and some snacks. Like this, right? But these say they're giving better products. And teenagers too, but if you normalize with the population, people in the military, we do our best to make our country secure, not only military-wise, health-wise, but you learn, similar in sure Taiwan, we're losing military people as well, right? In terms of regional so-called extinction or depopulation, closing military camps are an issue in Korea as well. So anyway, these are younger me. I had to Google my computer for it. So this is how the donation is right now, and the pattern will exist for some time. Look at the consumption. It's totally the opposite. My father recently got a small heart surgery, not a serious one, but whenever you have some surgery, you need some blood transfusion, right? And the way it does that, once we donate blood, it's all processed and frozen. And before use, it's all kind of defroze. And if there's leftover, they throw it away. They cannot refreeze it and reuse it, right? And that's the process. The amount of blood we use throughout entire life, it starts from after 70. Yeah? Same with our medical expenditure. If you see the entire expenditure of a Korean individual, the majority of the 70% of the medical expenses are spent after 70. So I've been to hospital for just regular checkup. I'm still okay because my father is great, but not health-wise. So I try to be unlike him. Somehow I'm thankful, but somehow I feel bad. So whatever I spend as I'm a professor, once I retire, I'll spend way more, at least twice or 3 times more. That's the statistic. So this is that we often realize or inform, but something I think all of us has to be aware of it. And so get all this. And the government doesn't have enough. The government doesn't have blood. That's why I wrote this paper, and they're not going to have enough monies as well for us as well. So we adjusted the population data sets because blood data are used and collected in different geographical scale, right? If you combine these all together, donations are decreasing, right? And consumptions are increasing. And there are actually people dying in Korea because of lack of blood. Yeah, it's video. So once it's done, I'll tell you. That's what I heard. It's off the record, even though it's recorded, not in a major hospital. Major hospital, you always, especially like NTU has a medical school or the medical hospital. There, no way. But what I heard is that once all the difficult parts are done, then they have to be relocated to smaller hospitals. So it means less priority. And they're having difficulty securing blood for the government, right? Okay, and since I'm a spatial demographer and geographer, I map things, and Gyeonggi is the worst. And also there's different sensitivity analysis, donation frequency, age cap. So far, it's illegal to donate blood after 70 by law. But if you, in European countries like Germany, if a doctor says yes, no matter how he or she is older, then they can donate blood. So I think Korea has to think about that as well. Population sizes keep decreasing, so we have to need a lot of promotion. Okay, that's about it. Given time, I'm also working on the shortage nursing facilities, and my major interest this year and next year will be decreasing pediatrics and schools. I already write a short paper about schools in Korean that we're gonna lose schools, and the way we lose is geographically uneven. Okay, so some students here have to come in like an hour, very long, right? Because it's not very densely populated, and that's also possible. And degree of urbanization is some new research. It's a map produced by one of my advisees. It's kind of unifying the definition of urban throughout the world. So if the global, at the global level, if we want some statistics about urban versus rural or semi-urban, then we can have some very consistent definition. Not necessarily denying the legal definition, but I'm sure you visited Jeju Island, some of you, but even the top of the mountain is considered city by definition. And we try to modify that, okay? And I think this is important. Then we can say we can measure school accessibility and hospital accessibility more accurately. So far, so good, right? I'm more than halfway done. Okay, so now I'm talking about gridded population, like spatial downscaling, and how those are related to climate risk. This is another paper right after that I write after the projection paper, and the blood paper was the next. This was the one that I really wanted to work on, so that's why we work on the population projection first, so make as good evidence or reference, right? And you'll see why. Depopulation and superaging as a whole means population implosion. If one says population implosion in Western or European American context, then scholars over there, oh, that's too strong, that's too much. But if I say this in East Asia, like in front of you, somehow understandable, right? Because it's like a radical shrinking, right? And my imagination was that we all know that South Korea is losing population, and Taiwan and Korea, our climate is getting hotter than the global average, mainly because we're close to the Pacific, and even climate change is not globally uneven. We are the pioneers. We're going to experience the hottest summer and most humid summer than the pretty much rest of the globe. So I was curious about whether increase of heat will be faster or decrease of population will be faster. Because if we're losing population really fast, then we don't have to prepare for the climate change, for example. That was very naive, but it's a very reasonable criticism. But because adapting climate change costs a lot of money too, right? It is like so. That's how I did it. And fertility was the lowest. Last year was a bit low, upper than I think 7.8, but then 23 was 7.2. And if you see Seoul, it's 0.58. It's really low, but I think it can be lower. It depends on how we redefine Seoul, but I haven't done it yet. Okay, and this is actually the most difficult figure that I have to introduce to you. But the main message is that risk, in order to define risk, exposure, vulnerability, hazard have to be all taken in place. The responses can be either enhance the risk or lower the risk, depending on whether we're good at it or not. Hazard means just pure heat. Okay? So if somewhere is hot but there's no people, it's just hazard but no risk because no one's there, right? It doesn't matter. It's like 70. Oh no, that's too hot. 30 or 40 or 50, it doesn't matter, right? Because no one's there. Exposure means a number of people. If one person versus 100 people. So if one person is exposed to heat, that's lower exposure than 100 people exposure to the same heat. Doesn't make sense. In vulnerability, it's like a social status thing. Wealth, living alone, whether work outside or urban versus rural, something. So these systematically characterize risk. And the risk goes up above a certain level, it becomes a disaster. So disaster, hazard, not risk, not necessarily the same thing. And that's how we specify these terms so that we can analyze climate risk accurately or systematically. These are the heats. The smallest map indicates the presence heat. The reddest pixel is about 27 days. It means every year, the hottest pixel in South Korea have 27 heat alerts, right? And the rest are the difference map. B is the 30, 40, 50, 60. So it's like a future. The red pixels here indicates the increase in heat days. And blue indicates a decrease in heat days. So they're non-linear. These aren't done by me. These are done by physical geographers who do climate change scenarios modeling. One of them won't consider him a geographer. No, I'm an atmospheric scientist. No, I know how to converse with them and use their data so we can overlay the population data set that we produced before. And these are the downscaled projection. So total population above 65, 75, 85, and the difference between 2020 to 2060. So blue indicates that losing population at the municipal level, right? That's like 162, a very quite higher resolution, right? And this is something that government doesn't provide or cannot provide. And I share with the professor why. If the central government announced that, oh, your city will lose population after 5 years, then the mayor of the city will be very upset, and his main responsibility to fight against the central government that, no, we're not losing our population, right? And if hundreds of them like that, then government will have to somehow stop working or very less effective. The red indicates increase. If you see older population, we're only gaining older population, losing some, but mainly gaining. So what does it tell us? My work is influenced, motivated American case studies. This is almost 10 years ago, even published in Nature Climate Change. Some demographers, some climate change analysis, NCAR, in case you know the term. They are the institute that produce all RCPs as climate change scenarios. So let me explain this figure to you. The total change indicates, it means that change in exposure. So it means in the future, in the United States, more people will be exposed to heat. Primarily, United States, they're gaining population, right? And they're gonna get it will get hotter. So it's very expected that there will be total heat, right? But part of it is because of getting hotter. The part of it is because they're having more people, but there's also internal urban migration. People are moving away from the Midwest to like East Coast and West Coast, and that makes people more exposed to heat. Okay, but Korean case is different. We're gonna have more exposure. It means that climate change is faster than losing population. So I was happy that I was finishing this paper, and but actually climate effects is really huge because our summer is going to be like Taiwan, the same thing. We're more than global average, but since we're losing population, the exposure is kind of like compensated. So I'm not sure whether at this point I should be happy about it or sad about it, right? It's some mixed feelings. And I also want to compare for different age threshold, because now in Korea we're discussing about what do you mean by old, what do you mean by senior. Could be 65, but I think there's also the question like 72. So that's why I want to train to see how they differ and see they're so radical. Age above 85, the way they're exposed to heat increasing exponentially, primarily because we're having so many older population, right? So I thought in my future work, I'll be more focusing on the older population, and that's based on this work. Partly because we're actually getting healthier. This is another paper that I wrote with MDs. We are healthier. Older adults in Korea is healthier. So when I become 65, I'll be healthier than when my father was 65, right? And that can be measured by frailty. Frailty is it's an index. It can be defined many different things, including mobility. He cannot walk fast, sadly. I still can run. And I'm losing muscle, but he lost more muscle. And he's clear, but in the future, it's also likely he may have dementia. And these all characterize frailty. So a decrease in frailty means older adults getting healthier, more capable, still young enough to do things and work and teach at the university, for instance. So I took that out, include the vulnerability. Vulnerability, I didn't show the indicator, but like living alone, working outside, inside, median income, those are all considered, and education to have a vulnerability index, and it's overlay with these exposure. Then the urban area, they're largely exposed, but not necessarily vulnerable. The rural area, not much exposed, but they're more vulnerable. So these dynamics have to be considered to to pretend. And sadly, in South Korea, climate change, they don't consider population change because of bureaucracy, I think. I hope the South Korean government doesn't watch this video in the future. From the ministry-wise, they don't, the population of Ministry for Health and Social Welfare, right? So they're not kind of, it's kind of difficult to, I guess, work with them, for them to work together. And so pretty much I'm heading towards the end of my talk. Very similar, identical framework, but different hazard. So sea level rise and storm surge like flooding. Storm surge means typhoon. If typhoon comes, then the water height elevated and it comes to our land and deeper, right? With the sea level rise, if sea level rise is medium, mean sea level rise, then it can come deeper. Does that make sense? Very simple science. In order to do that, we need gridded population. The left side is done by one of my master's students who graduated. I'm happy that he graduated and use machine learning to downscale all of this information using land cover, road network, all of whatever maps that he could get. He used all government data sets to allocate people, yeah, okay, based on that work. And he can do this for the future too, because we have the projected data, population projections. And that's what he's working on. And before, hopefully get a PhD position in the States. And if you overlay that gridded pixel with the sea level rise, and these are the expected exposure, the bright red indicates because of sea level rise. The rest are just because of the typhoon. The blue is important because people are decreasing there. Very old, traditional fishery villages with a lot of older population. And I'll show you later, but by 50, it's very likely half of them will be older than 65, right? Then I think if we see that aggregate layer, even though I like maps in order to have a more aggregated view, climate change impacts is very high, but also the population decrease. And so this is something that we should consider when preventing or adapting to sea level rise and future stronger storm surge, because usually what Korea do is we construct things, we build levees and some infrastructure, but it takes time, right? It might take a decade or more, but once it's accomplished, then people won't be there anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because they're older, and older people, they don't want to move to elsewhere. So this is something I found it's important. I presented this work last summer in International Population Conference when my student presented his the machine learning gridded population work. I have drafted a manuscript, but I haven't submitted yet. Hopefully I do so once I'm back home. In terms of policy, we have to really consider migration as well, right? I'm not talking forced migration. It's not difficult, but you see, it's another paper published in Korean. I only projected to 30, very immediate. Then it will be 31% will be older, like 65 old fishery villages. And I didn't include this number in the paper because it has too much uncertainty. But if I'm to just linearly extrapolate that, I can present it. I don't mind sharing with you. Then it's going to be like 50% by 25 years from now. And so going to get only worse, right? Then what's the point having all those expensive levee throughout the coast, right? And eventually, I'm not supporting like a nursing facilities. It's not perfect. It's not ideal. I really, for instance, I don't want my dad to be there. And I didn't want my grandma to be there. But at some point, they had to, right? Because not many options exist. So we may have to think of like a disaster preparation and the elderly care at the same time, because they might be related for some areas. But in the government, there are different government. Government prevention is Ministry of Interior and Safety and so forth. And elderly care is, like I said, Ministry of Health and Welfare and so forth. And fishery village is a Ministry of Ocean and Marine and so forth, right? They're divided so they can work in a very systematic and very targeted way. But when they have to work together, could still a long way to go. So ongoing work with respect to climate risk. I finished the exposure paper and working on the vulnerability paper with one of my students. And I just talked about the sea level rise. And eventually, after I submit the exposure paper that I just showed you, I'm going to add an additional layer of vulnerability. Then it will become another paper. And exposure to ground level ozone, that's air pollution, which is getting worse in Korea. It's worse than PM 2.5 or PM 10. I'm sure you have very similar experience here, not in terms of ozone, but in terms of air pollution. You must be concerned about air pollution here as well, right? Although I haven't really explained it to you, these analysis consider like a hourly population movement, because ozone kind of fluctuates over time. And I've been drafting it, and one of my students presented it last summer in Shanghai, and he planned to submit it, I think, next year. So that's about it. And many of you asked me, when was my first time to be here? It was 96, when I was in high school. I spent 2 weeks in Taiwan. What's your Taipei? I was in bus and outside there was a classroom, spent 2 weeks. And I was there with the rest of my day. And it's a museum, right? Yeah, it looks the same museum, right? But I'm way older. Thank you very much. Yeah.